The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
It's official. Ohio State is hiring Matt Patricia.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes.
It's official. Ohio State is hiring Matt Patricia as its next defensive coordinator. And on the surface, the first time I heard this, I started to scratch my head. I started to wonder why Ryan Day would go this route when there is someone currently on staff that could fill that role. And then I thought about Matt Patricia in the NFL, what he did while he was leading the defense for the New England Patriots. His 8 years of calling plays for a defense, which is huge when you're thinking about bringing somebody in to lead the Buckeyes defense when Ohio State's trying to run it back in 2025. And I also think that year Matt Patricia took off was valuable for him as a coach. Yeah, he was with the Eagles for a little bit, but outside of that, in 2024, he wasn't coaching. He wasn't an analyst. He wasn't anything. He was just focusing on himself. And I read that he spent some time with Bill Belichick preparing and trying to dive into the college game. I didn't know that Matt Patricia was thinking about coming to college football, but it makes sense. You take a year off, you focus on yourself, you learn something new, and maybe you have to go down to a level you haven't been at since 2003 to get back to a level you want to be at. And I get why Ryan Day is going this route. A guy in Matt Patricia, when Ryan Day was in the NFL with the 49ers and with the Eagles, Matt Patricia's defenses messed up any plan that the quarterbacks had that Ryan Day was trying to lead. In 2015, Matt Patricia's defense for the Patriots held Sam Bradford to 120 passing yards and only 2 touchdowns, 58% completion percentage. In 2016, Ryan Day also went up against the New England Patriots, which were led by Matt Patricia leading the defense. Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback for the 49ers that day. He only had a little over 200 passing yards, 16 to 30 passing, 2 touchdowns, and that was all he had. And I thought about that and went into it a little bit more and thinking Ryan Day's track record of being a offensive guru, with that thought about Ryan Day being something I'm thinking about here, I went back to Ryan Day's time in the NFL and began to think about a guy or a coach that maybe Ryan Day struggled with. Matt Patricia's that guy. Ryan Day went from one coach to the other and couldn't figure it out. Now, you can look at the quarterbacks and say, well, those are the quarterbacks. They weren't that good. You can also realize there was a guy on the other side of the field that was orchestrating the defense that Ryan Day was trying to go up against. And that defense, which was led by Matt Patricia, didn't allow Ryan Day's guy that he coached do anything successful. Had a couple touchdowns here, but we even saw Patrick Mahomes in mop-up duty in the game, scoring a few touchdowns. But at the end of the day, everybody realizes that wasn't good enough, and you got destroyed. You got demolished. And that's kind of the same thing that happened back then. And I think for Ryan Day moving forward, we can all trust him. What's one thing I've been preaching about ever since Jim Knowles left was that when it comes to Ryan Day making hires, Ryan Day has knocked so many hires out that even if you don't think Matt Patricia is someone you can fully get into right now, you could fully get into Ryan Day and what Ryan Day is doing. Ryan Day really hasn't messed up hires offensively at the coordinator position, offensively or defensively. There's only been one bad hire on the defensive side of the ball as far as a coordinator, and that was Kerry Coombs in 2020 and 2021. Quickly moving to Matt Barnes after game 2 in 2021, who was the D coordinator, we believe, but didn't have the official tag, but he did turn that thing into getting a D coordinator job at Memphis at the end of the 2021 season. Outside of that, Greg Madison, Jeff Hafley in 2019 got it done. Jim Knowles, 2022 to 2024, he also got it done. So my gut is Ryan Day right now learned from his mistake early on, and he's going to knock this hire out too. Also, on the offensive side of the ball, I don't see a bad offensive hire when it comes to the coordinators. Kevin Wilson was the OC that was retained by Ryan Day when Ryan Day got promoted to head coach from 2019 to 2022. Brian Hartline in 2023 didn't call plays. Ryan Day was still hands-on with the offense, so maybe it was a co-OC thing for Brian Hartline, but I don't think he was a problem. I don't think he drastically hurt the offense. 2024, Chip Kelly and Brian Hartline with the co-OC tag. Great. Right now, it's going to be Brian Hartline and Keaton Bailey. And everything I believe and think about 2025 is that those two guys will be great for Ohio State's offense. Ryan Day messed up one hire early in his coaching career, but since then, he hasn't messed up any. And that's the only one that he's messed up when it comes to the coordinators that Ryan Day has hired at Ohio State. You can trust Ryan Day. I can trust Ryan Day. Regardless of what you think about Matt Patricia, the recruiting piece, he has guys at every position that can recruit at a high level that will help him figure out recruiting at Ohio State. Does he need to be doing the dirty work? Well, you got James Laurinaitis and Larry Johnson and Matt Patricia and Tim Walton. If they're going to do a lot of that dirty work that maybe he doesn't have to. Also, when it comes to the culture fit and maybe some former players not getting along with him, I don't think Ryan Day would make this hire if he thought there would be a culture problem or a personality problem with bringing Matt Patricia in. In Day we trust. That's all I'm going to say. Ryan Day has handed out a lot of promotions this offseason. One to Brian Hartline and one to Keaton Bailey and one to Billy Fessler. But that's not it. Ryan Day handed out a couple promotions on the same day that he hired Matt Patricia to be the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. One of those promotions was to secondary coach Tim Walton, who is now the co-defensive coordinator at Ohio State. And they'll also be promoting safeties coach Matt Guerrieri to passing game coordinator. Normally, that's a title that I normally hear about on the offensive side of the ball, but even with Matt Guerrieri's experience leading defenses and the way that he has made Ohio State safeties, help develop them into being some of the best in the country, that makes a whole lot of sense to having a guy at the secondary on defense that's going to be leading the passing game for Ohio State's defense of 2025. I like it. I have no problem with it. Normally, as many people, there's one thing I don't like, but I'll get there in a second. As far as Matt Guerrieri goes, I think his promotion is well-deserved. It's earned. It's another way to allow him to make a little bit more money. And I think Matt Guerrieri has earned it. He's earned every penny, not just from where he was before this first time at Ohio State, but where he is currently and how we all know that he understands the system Ryan Day wants. And as Ryan Day called him, he is a rising star in the sport. So he checks a lot of boxes. He is a guy that I think moving forward is going to be someone that Ryan Day is going to treat like a Keaton Bailey or a Brian Hartline. He's going to try and do everything he can to keep him there in Columbus, Ohio, because that's great. The Tim Walton piece is interesting because Tim Walton has been a defensive coordinator before, at three times throughout his career. One in 2007, one in 2008, and the other was in 2013. I'm going to pull this up quickly to let you know the teams he was coordinating on the defensive side of the ball throughout his career. 2007, he was the D coordinator of the Miami Hurricanes. In 2008, he was the D coordinator for the Memphis Tigers, excuse me. And then 2013, he was the D coordinator for the St. Louis Rams. There's another reason why I think this might work. And normally I'm a person that is not a fan of co-coordinators. In 2019 for the Buckeyes defense, it worked. Outside of that, we don't see co-coordinators at all. Well, 2021 maybe, but that was such of a weird year. You couldn't roll with Kerry Coombs anymore. You kind of had to promote somebody because if you did roll with Kerry Coombs, there could have been more losses on Ohio State's schedule than they may have had more losses than they ended up with at the end of the day. On offense, last year with Chip Kelly and Brian Hartline, we know that Hartline had the co-OC tag, but Chip Kelly ran the show. And so it can work. I think it might work here because most of Tim Walton's coaching career, at least the last little bit of it, was in the National Football League. From 2009 until 2021, Tim Walton was in the National Football League. He was with the Lions, the Rams, the Giants, and the Jaguars. And yes, he was on the Jaguars when Urban Meyer was the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, which could be why Ryan Day said, hey, Tim Walton, come on to Ohio State. I didn't even put two and two together when Tim Walton was hired by Ryan Day to come and coach the Ohio State's corners, but that could have been a big reason why he came in. We know Tyler Bowen was on that Jaguars coaching staff when Urban Meyer was down there in Florida. So that could be why. That's another connection that a couple years ago I didn't really put together. Tim Walton's experience in the National Football League is going to help Matt Patricia transition to being the D coordinator at Ohio State. And so when you put those two things together, two guys that have spent a lot of time in the National Football League on the defensive side of the ball, Ryan Day understands the desire of Matt Patricia to work with someone to help him make this transition as smooth as it can be. Yeah, there may be some hiccups. There may be some slumps. Can't have a week one. There's no way you can have that week one. You don't want to start the season off with a loss. Not at all. So what can you do to help Matt Patricia prepare for his first game as defensive coordinator at Ohio State, while also helping someone that's been a big piece of the Buckeyes defense since he's been there? Promote Tim Walton to co-DC. Move forward with that. Allow that to work. You already know you have the buy-in of the players with Tim Walton. You already know you got the buy-in of the players when you have Maguire. So the players are bought in. The players believe in them. The players are not going to go against Tim Walton and Maguire. And they might look at Matt Patricia and say, man, I heard about you in 2015 or 2018. I heard both the people were saying, I heard about X, Y, and Z, and you realize OG Walton going to let that fly right now. You can't allow that bad behavior, that bad culture to create a bad culture at Ohio State. So I get the Tim Walton thing and promoting him to co-DC because I think pairing him with Matt Patricia, two guys that have been in the NFL for a very long time, I think that can help things work. That'd be the only reason I think a co-coordinator situation would work. Even in 2024, Chip Kelly was the OC. I know there was a co-OC tag for Brian Hartline. That was all of Chip Kelly's operation.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on tickets. Gametime. Download Gametime, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Great win for Villanova over St. John's on Wednesday night.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
But we know that the Kyle Neptune era has not been great. The biggest win they've got, they beat UConn this year. That was a massive victory for them. But now they pick up a win, an even bigger win this year, and that comes over Rick Pitino and the Johnnies, 73-71 Villanova, a great game. We'll get to the game and the details in a second, but I actually want to start with Villanova and kind of take stock of where the Wildcats are at. Because you look at a win like this, you think, oh man, they've got that UConn win. They've stacked that. Is this putting them into bubble consideration? I mean, I guess technically everyone is. And if you're a mid-tier Big East team, you're probably going to be in some level of bubble consideration. Sure, absolutely. I would say right now, and I would say when we get to Selection Sunday, that they're going to be on the outside looking in. That's what I've got for Villanova. I think we ultimately get 4 Big East teams, the teams that are at the top right now, St. John's, Creighton, Marquette, and UConn. But the bubble, let's be honest, it's enough right now that you just never know. So if Villanova can find a way to keep winning, maybe it's there. But as I look at it right now, I just don't see it. They're 15-10 overall, 8-6 in Big East play. As I said, wins over both UConn's and St. John's. The problem right now is that UConn win is actually only a quad 2 victory right now. Now, it's barely. It'll probably flip back to a quad 1 win, particularly now that Liam McNeely's back for UConn. That's a big deal. But for the time being, this St. John's win is the only quad 1 win on Villanova's resume. They were 0-5 in quad 1 coming in. The other and bigger problem for Villanova is not their lack of quad 1 wins. It's the number of quad 3 and quad 4 losses that they have, because all of these data points make up the picture of your resume. So Villanova, 3-2 in quad 3, 6-1 in quad 4. So 2 quad 3 losses and one quad 4 loss. Those games can't help you at all. Literally, all they can do is hurt you. And Nova has been hurt 3 times by them. That to me is why when you look at Big East teams and you're like, but wait a second, Isaac, Villanova is ahead of Xavier in the standings. Sure, but Xavier doesn't have those kind of losses. So that's why X is on the bubble. And I would say Villanova isn't. So there is that. And as I look back at Villanova, I'm curious where their non-conference strength of schedule is. I didn't actually look at that. Villanova, 327. There you go. That's all you need to know right now. That's not going to do it. That's another problem. Like, if it's close for the bubble teams, they're almost unequivocally, without fail, going to favor teams that have a stronger non-conference strength of schedule. And that's clearly not where Villanova is at. Now, did you realize, here's what's interesting. Villanova's offense, man, they're great. 4th nationally in 3-point percentage at 40.2, and they're 5th nationally in free throw percentage at 80.8%. The offense is 15th in offensive efficiency at KenPom. That's really good. The big problem in terms of gameplay, I'm not talking resume now, but what they actually do on the floor, is that Villanova is 142nd in defensive efficiency at KenPom. That's just simply not good enough. All right, let's get to the game. It was a weird game flow in Villanova's win over St. John's. Villanova and Cal Neptune, they don't care about weird. Eric Dixon, Wooga Poplar and company, they just want to win these games, and that's what they did. But first 9.5 minutes of this game, like basically the first quarter of this game, neither team led by more than 4 points. But then Nova builds a 7-point lead. Nobody scores for 2 minutes. Villanova gets a 3, leads by 10. Nobody scores for 2 minutes. And then St. John's goes on this 10-2 run over the final 3:49 to cut the lead back down to 2 at the half. It was an odd first half, but the second half really started to mimic it in a lot of ways. It was really tight for the first 7 minutes of the second half. Villanova opens up yet again a double-digit lead, an 11-point lead with 9:56 to go. And then St. John's, man, we just get that Rick Pitino pressure, and before you have blinked, they have gone on a 14-0 run to cut an 11-point deficit and turn it into a 3-point lead. It took exactly 3 minutes and 2 seconds. That is 182 seconds. I know how to do math. I'm great at it. I mean, that is crazy. And at that point, I don't know if you were watching this game in real time. For me, in real time, I was like, oh, that's it. All St. John's had to do was get back in the lead. Now they're going to come back and find a way to win this game down the stretch. But they just couldn't. They could not do it. Because then Villanova responds with their own 9-2 run. It's keyed by Eric Dixon. Had 2 threes back-to-back. He did not have a great game by his standards, but those 2 threes I thought were really key down the stretch. They go up 68-64 with 3:22 to go. And then we just kind of trade buckets back and forth. And then Simeon Wilcher, there's a great play design, gets him a 3 out on the wing. I mean, it is beautiful and pure, sets his feet, buckets. That was with 28 seconds to go. It puts St. John's up 171-70. I was like, that might be the dagger right there. Because I don't know, maybe you can find something with Dixon, but they'd been trying to isolate Dixon one-on-one a lot down the stretch. And St. John's was putting up great defense. Nobody was coming to help or cutting or screen or anything. And so I was like, I just don't know if Villanova's got anything, but they did. Tyler Perkins for 3 for the final score of the game. Simeon Wilcher misses another 3 at the buzzer, and that's that. Congrats to the Wildcats. A big time win. Maybe, at the time we said the UConn win was maybe the biggest win of the Kyle Neptune era. Given what St. John's is this year, this actually is probably the biggest win of the Kyle Neptune era. So again, or not again, I just want to say something new. I know St. John's loses this game, but I just got to tell you, it does my heart so good to see that Rick Pitino pressure back at this high major level, man. I just loved it at Louisville. Just see them go crazy and annoy teams, or back at Kentucky, absolutely loved it. And I know we could watch it at Iona too, but it's just different when it's high major athletes doing it. And so that, gosh, And as I said, it keyed that 14-0 run that St. John's had. So I know they lose the game, but it just, man, I'm reminded how happy it makes me. And so there you go with that. Also, Kaderi Richmond really, really, really is finally starting to come along really strong for St. John's. You know, it took some time to get going, but I really feel like he's found out who he needs to be, and Rick Pitino's found out how to use him, and really good. I mean, he's just so strong. He's a dude, and it's great. What's funny, though, we haven't even talked about the leading scorers in this game, because for St. John's, it was not Kaderi Richmond. It was not R.J. Lewis or Zuby Ejiofor or Simeon Wilcher, but it was Aaron Scott and his 22 points. I mean, he was raining it in from three. Not very efficient, 5 of 13, but still, he was efficient from the floor in totality, 8 of 16, right at 50%. And then for Villanova, it was Wooga Poplar, 22 points on 9 of 14 shooting, 2 of 4 from three, perfect at the free throw line in 2 attempts, and 6 rebounds. That was just 2 off his Villanova high. He's had great games against St. John's both times, 22 points in both of those. And again, because part of this and why this was so important is because Eric Dixon wasn't very efficient in his shooting. 17 points, yeah, but it took him 17 shots to get there. Just 5 of 17 from the field, 3 of 10 from three, and only 4 of 7 at the free throw line. But again, they win because they as a team did enough. Quick Big East update then following this game, because remember, the top 4 have all been playing each other, and then, you know, Villanova gets this win over St. John's, which is outside that top 4. But remember that on Tuesday night, UConn knocked off Creighton. Otherwise, we'd be staring at things being really tight at the top. So right now, coming into Thursday, St. John's leads the Big East 12-2, then Creighton 11-3, Marquette 10-4, UConn tied in the loss column with Marquette, but one fewer win at 9-4. And just to know where Villanova's at, they're keeping touch in 5th place at 8-6. So Creighton, had they beaten UConn on Tuesday night, would be tied with St. John's right now, 12-2. And why would that be all the more awesome? Because those teams are playing each other this weekend, and I cannot wait. It's going to be great. I love a good regular season matchup with first place on the line, and I wish we were getting it. But that's that. So I went through of the top 4 in the Big East, St. John's, Creighton, Marquette, UConn, and looked at all 4 of their remaining schedules just to see like who's got the upper hand down the stretch based on like on paper easier schedule, on paper more difficult schedule. It's actually Creighton that I think has the easiest remaining schedule. Again, as I said, they're at St. John's this weekend, but then after that, here's the rest of Creighton's closing run: versus Georgetown, versus DePaul, at Xavier. That's going to be a big time bubble game for Xavier, by the way, at Seton Hall, and then hosting Butler. You get past that St. John's, all of those are very winnable games. After Creighton, I think UConn has the second easiest of these teams, St. John's, and then I think Marquette has the toughest closing stretch of the 4 of them. Why? They host Seton Hall, then they got to go to Nova, which as we see is a difficult place. They host Providence, then they're at Georgetown, at UConn versus St. John's. So close at UConn hosting St. John's. Good luck to you, Marquette, who's been struggling lately already anyway. I think they're going to probably wind up being 4th out of these 4 teams. And potentially, depending on how Villanova does, and Xavier might fall even further.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on tickets. Gametime. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Ole Miss survived South Carolina, a ref show, but had Malik Dia completely go off.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ole Miss used hot shooting in the first half, the hottest shooting of the year for Ole Miss in any half, to build a 13-point lead. South Carolina used a ref show and some gritty defense and some poor shooting, by the Ole Miss Rebels to chip away at that and eventually took the lead with about 5 minutes to go in the game. It was very up and down whenever that happened, and then Malik Dia absolutely took over the ball game. He's the reason that Ole Miss won this basketball game. He's the reason Ole Miss got their 8th win. That and Dre Davis making an unbelievably clutch shot. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and we are overreacting to Ole Miss's 72-68 win over the South Carolina Gamecocks in Columbia. It was an absolute ref show in this game in the second half, to the point where every Ole Miss big man had 4 fouls, and credit to Ole Miss for not fouling at the end. Malik Dia had 4 fouls. Dre Davis had 4 fouls. I think Michael Brown-Jones had 4 fouls. Jamin Brakefield had 3. Every possession down the court was an opportunity for us to see the striped shirts blow their whistle and call a foul, and all different types of fouls. It was fantastic. You got to see a little excessive contact. You got to see some traveling. You got to see a little interference. You got to see some obstruction. You got to see all of this stuff, which is what everybody paid for in their tickets, was to go watch referees call fouls. And I appreciate that oh, wait, my bad. That's not at all what they went to see. They went to see a basketball game. And the only way that South Carolina had a chance in that game with the way it was going was for a herky-jerky foul type game. Every time South Carolina went to the basket, a whistle blew. Now, the credit to, I guess, Ole Miss, South Carolina doesn't know how to win a game. They don't. They do not know how to win a game. In the last 2 minutes of that game, there was a turnover and a bad shot. That's what South Carolina did. So if you wonder why South Carolina has a 2-possession loss to Auburn, Alabama, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, almost beating Florida, if you wonder why that keeps happening, it's because they don't know how to win a basketball game. They don't make winning plays. They don't know how to close it out. They're going to win one of these games, but it's going to be because the other team loses the game, not because they win it. They have a good scheme. I like their coach. I like the way they play. I like everything about them. They get so tight, though, whenever the clock starts winding down. And it's happening way too often for that not to be a regular occurrence. Ole Miss took advantage of that. Malik Dia took advantage of that. Dre Davis, he was a matchup problem for the good portion of the night for Ole Miss. He just was. There's really no way to look at this other than the fact that he was a problem for people tonight. Dre Davis hit a 2-point shot to go up 3 points with, I think, 17 seconds left or something like that. South Carolina did not get a shot up that was really effective. There was a bad, crazy pass. They did the inbound thing. Ole Miss made 1 free throw, missed the second, they ended up winning by 4 points. Now, my prediction on the show before the game was Ole Miss winning by 5 points in a rock fight, and that's exactly what this was. This game played out exactly like I thought it would. It was a disjointed mess. It was 2 defensive teams that like playing defense. It was a situation where both of these physical teams on defense gave the officials a chance to do what they love to do most, which is blow freaking whistles and make a free throw shooting contest in an SEC game. Ole Miss was able to win that free throw shooting contest, though, and Ole Miss was able to go 8-4 in the SEC. Ole Miss essentially punched their ticket into the NCAA basketball tournament officially, because everybody said 8 wins would be enough to get an SEC team there. But Ole Miss still has more winnable games on their schedule, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Now, Ole Miss has a home game against Mississippi State on Saturday. It's a sellout. It's already been announced. It's going to be nuts. That's a game that I expect Ole Miss to come out and play pretty well in. That's a game that I expect Ole Miss to win, if we're just going to be honest about it. You have a game at Vanderbilt, which is a weird game. Vandy is one of those, I don't want to say sneaky good, because they've beaten Kentucky, they've beaten Tennessee on their home floor. They play very well in Memorial Gym. That would be a big win for Ole Miss. But 10-4 in the first 14 games is now the goal heading into a 4-game stretch at the end of the season that includes Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, and Oklahoma. 2 of them on the road, by the way. I think Auburn's on the road and Florida's on the road.